Good afternoon. Welcome to Unity of Charlotte. To everyone that's here in person, to everyone that's joining us on Zoom, and if you happen to be watching us on YouTube, we're glad you checked in. My name is Reverend Lisa Herklotz. I am co-minister along with Reverend Jim Ernston, and we want to welcome everyone here to Unity of Charlotte. We have a mission statement here at Unity of Charlotte that is a statement of our purpose and why we're here. And usually we read it together, but today I want to invite you to close your eyes and just listen to the words as I read them out to you. Unity of Charlotte is the place where we nurture a deep and mature experience of God through the practice of unity principles. Simply put, we are here to love, grow, and serve. Thank you. Is anyone here for the first time? We have any first-time visitors? Well, welcome. Nice to have you here. If you didn't get one, we have a visitor's packet that I'm sure one of our ushers will be happy to get for you. There goes Ron right now. Please join us. We actually have a town hall after this meeting. You're welcome to join in. There'll be some coffee and refreshments. There'll be a little bit of time to share, so if you have any questions, please feel free to come meet Reverend Jim and myself or talk to any of our members to find out anything about Unity. So welcome. We're nice to have you here. And I didn't miss anybody else, did I? Very good. All right. We have a lot of ways that we get the message out about Unity of Charlotte. So these are ways you can check out what's going on. We have a website where you can sign up for our newsletter. We have a Facebook page. Please go and like us if you have not already. And you can watch past services on our YouTube channel. Also, we make announcements regularly here, but we also post a lot of other things that are going on our bulletin board. So be sure to check the bulletin board to get a full idea of everything that we have going on. I would like us to take a moment now to go into prayer. I invite you to gently close your eyes. Perhaps take a nice deep cleansing breath in. Let your attention move out of your head and into your heart. As we open up to this very sacred time of prayer together, it's together that we hold the truth that God, the power of God, the presence of God, the energy and light and love of God is everywhere present, moving and living within us, expressing as us, surrounding us with all the love and support and wisdom and guidance that is needed. We do not walk this journey alone. We have a powerful source, ever present to draw upon for strength, for faith, for wisdom, for inspiration. Just sit for a moment in silence and affirm this presence here now. And so it is. Amen. We'd like to affirm together our unity prayer of oneness, so please join me. There is one presence and one power in my life and universe, God the good, omnipotence. We claim and affirm this presence in our lives as love. Now I want to open up the space for you to speak aloud anyone that you would like to have uplifted in prayer, whether that be another person, yourself, or a situation, and we will hold them in sacred space and prayer. So please speak that aloud or in your heart. And together we affirm that the Spirit is already working in and through each and every person and situation to bring about the best outcome for all. And so it is. Amen. I'd like to invite up Martin and Maria to read our daily word.
I find peace in the beauty around me, a clear day, flowers swaying in the breeze, a gentle flowing stream. All reveal the presence of God and reflect my inner nature. Lasting peace resides within my mind and heart. If that peace is temporarily disturbed, if I am feeling out of sorts about my life or the situation of a dear one, I draw upon my strength and stability by turning away from outer circumstances and going within. I quiet the chatter of my mind, perhaps thinking of one of my peaceful thoughts, imagining the breeze caressing my face, hearing the trickling stream. In this quiet state, I connect with my source and begin to feel a settling calmness. I consider my life from this higher perspective and remain centered and serene no matter what is happening in my life or in the world. Peace be with you. John 20:26.
Paz interna. Invoco la paz infinita de Dios en mí. Encuentro la paz en la belleza que me rodea. Un cielo despejado, flores que se mecen con la brisa y un arroyo que fluye suavemente. Todo revela la presencia de Dios y refleja mi naturaleza interior. Experimento una paz duradera en mi mente y mi corazón. Si algo perturba esa paz, me alejo de las circunstancias externas y busco en mi interior la fortaleza y estabilidad que necesito. Aquieto mi mente, imaginando un lugar tranquilo. Siento la caricia de la brisa en mi rostro y encuentro el suave sonido del arroyo. En esta paz me conecto con mi fuente interior y siento una calma reconfortante. Al contemplar mi vida desde esta perspectiva, permanezco centrado y sereno, independiente de lo que suceda en mi vida o en el mundo. La paz sea con ustedes. El libro de Juan 20.
Nature as starting point. Nature as starting point. A lot of you know that I grew up in Southern California. You knew that.
I did.
Did they all know that?
Probably some of them.
Some of you guys knew that. You knew.
Yes, she knew.
She knew back there in the back. Southern California, so growing up in Southern California, maybe not so obvious, but obviously one of my favorite things to do, in high school at least, was to jump in the car, put my surfboard on top of the car and go surfing. That was one of my absolute favorite things to do. And this is going to be obvious because it ties in with nature as the starting point. If you know Southern California, you know that Seal Beach is one of the beaches in Southern California. It's just a little bit south of Long Beach. Everyone knows Long Beach. But Seal Beach has one of those nice long jetties that when the waves come in, when it breaks, it is a nice long wave and a nice long ride on your surfboard. One of my favorite places to be in Southern California. It was when you're surfing, and this might not be so obvious, when you're surfing, it's not simply one wave after another. It's not just a constant wave, one after the other. There are actually sets of waves that come and go. So you might experience 6 or 7 waves that come in a row, and then there's a lull. Nothing happens. Mm-hmm. For me, it was a time to paddle back out there and be out into the ocean, sit on that surfboard and wait for the next set to come in. Now, during that time, during that lull in between, You're sitting, you turn away from the shore, and you look out to where the waves are coming in. And you look, you anticipate, and you just fall in love with nature all over again. There's that anticipation. Imagination takes over at this point as well. You look out on the horizon and you stare with an intensity because you know that you'll see that next come back up again. You'll see that, you'll look at it, you'll stare, you'll recognize it as that next set coming in. That anticipation, that your heart starts to flutter when you see it. And when you're ready, you turn, you get back down, and you start to paddle one more time for that next wave. Boy, I get chills just thinking about it. Anybody want to go? Let's go right now. Absolutely. After experiencing hundreds of these sets, you know that these waves are going to come over and over again. There is that expectation. They will rise up out of the ocean. It's a given. You know that this is going to happen again. That these waves are all part of that same body of water. The waves are one with the ocean. And as humans with a surfboard, we just happen to be part of that oneness with them one more time. To surf is to become part of that wave. And it's one of the most exhilarating. It's exhilarating and zen-like at the same time. It's almost impossible to explain. There's a meditative quality as an excitement all at the same time. So that's my wave experience that I can share with you here today. And a little bit of a literary foreshadowing of what we're going to talk about today, a little bit of a foreshadowing. That ocean represents the divine, nature is the wave, and we are all surfers on that wave.
So you may not know this, but when I first met Reverend Jim, he had long hair that he put back in a ponytail. So I can totally see him in Southern California as a surfer. It's a fun image in my head. So we're wrapping up Earth Awareness Month. And so we're going to be talking about nature, but from a different perspective. We're going to be talking about the nature as a concept of God. And there's three ways. The way unity speaks of, believes in, and expresses God is a little different than most traditional Christian churches. And however, it's not new. The mystics have been describing a more metaphysical experience of God for centuries. It's a mystical experience beyond the form. So in unity, we think of God in three ways. We don't experience God as an object of worship outside of us, but as a presence that is living within us and within everything. God, we see, so this is God in us. We also see God as a force of nature expressing in the world, that force of life, that force of energy, that vitality that makes life and creation move and change and express. This is, and we are a part of that nature. So this is God expressing as us. And finally, we talk about God often as principle. Principle or law is an unchanging truth. It means this is truth no matter what else appears. This truth is never going to change. It's universal. So God as principle, we understand is that principle is in which we live. We live our lives through that principle. So this is God expressing through us. So these are the ways we experience God. And everybody has a different, if you talk to anybody about what is your relationship with God, as many people as you ask, you'll get as many different answers. And it's all good. At Unity, we have this particular way of expressing it. Charles Fillmore, as most of you know, is the co-founder of Unity with Myrtle. And in his book, Christian Healing, you want to put the slide up? Or do you have the remote?
There we go.
Thanks. Thanks, tech team back there, keeping us on track.
You're awesome.
In his book, Christian Healing, he said, the starting point in spiritual realization is right understanding of the one designated as the Almighty. The starting point. The starting point of any spiritual journey is to begin to understand a right understanding of what that one, that Almighty One is. And that's why our first principle, our first unity principle is there is but one power and one presence in my life and in the universe, God the good, omnipotence, a single source of all life. And as a matter of fact, that's the affirmation we're going to be using through our talk today. There is only one presence, one power in the universe and in my life, God the good.
That might sound familiar. We addressed that together. We said that statement together. There's only one presence, one power active in this universe.
Yeah.
Sometimes we also say, in my life, and it is good. One presence. Looking at the Bible in terms of a metaphysical story of our unfoldment, within Unity, we think of the Bible as a metaphysical outpicturing of our movement within our lives, from the Old Testament through the New Testament. These are stories that show our progression in our lives as well.
Our spiritual unfoldment.
Our spiritual unfoldment. That's exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about a personal journey of spiritual realization in terms of those stories, those studies we do in terms of from Old Testament to New Testament. And we start the New Testament with that, or the Old Testament with that original idea that maybe God was outside of ourselves. Sometimes that's where we start our understanding, is a God outside of ourselves. And yet we progress from that as well. It starts as a separation and maybe even a judgment, but we know better, and it moves into more of a New Testament idea of who and what our relationship is with that divine. So remember that metaphysically, the stories of the Bible show us a natural path through our understanding, an unfoldment of God as us and through us as well. In the Old Testament, again, in the Old Testament, God showed up as being as part of altars, as being part of places of worship, and ultimately as part of the temple structure itself in Jerusalem. God was part of these external entities. And then we have the New Testament and the Gospels that inform us otherwise. In the New Testament, on the other hand, God could never be separate from us. Although we can be individualized, and here's where we get back to that wave metaphor, even though we can be individual, God, and I lost my place, like that wave, God is part of our experience as well. As individualized wave of that ocean. Does that make sense? Because when I looked for those waves, not one of those waves was exactly the same. Not one of us is exactly the same. I experienced a different, that's why I kept going back. If it was the same wave, the same formation each time, I would have gotten bored with that experience very quickly. Each wave is individualized.
And yet, each wave holds the essence of the Pacific Ocean.
Absolutely. Those waves at Seal Beach hold the essence of the Pacific Ocean in it.
Yep.
Each wave does that. We are individualizations, in other words, we are individualizations of the divine. We're not all exactly the same, but we are from the divine. One more time, our affirmation. There is only one presence and one power in the universe and my life, God, the good.
So let's now look at the idea of God as a presence dwelling in us. We turn to the Gospels, the good news, the New Testament, where it's written that Jesus said, "The Father and I are one." The Father and I are one. So this was the message Jesus really brought in that time of history, because it was a very big shift in the understanding of that one who is the Almighty. Instead of an almighty being outside ourselves, now he has introduced the understanding that God is this almighty presence in us, forever present. And that was a big shift in that thinking there. So now there's no separation between God and ourselves. So what does that mean then? I'm one with God. I'm one with the universe. I'm one with nature, and we're one with each other. We're each a part of a whole. Just as every wave is individual and separate, it's still a part of the ocean, and it's made up of the ocean. One of the foundational ministers and writers of the Unity Movement was Eric Butterworth. And in one of his books, he said, "God is not in you in the sense that a raisin is in a bun." So think about it. A bun has a raisin in it. God doesn't exist within us like a separate little entity. We actually have the presence of God in every part of our being. It means God is everywhere, equally present in me and in this world. So he goes on to say, the wave, going back to the idea of the ocean and the wave is nothing more or less than the ocean expressing as a wave. The wave is nothing more or less than the ocean, the entirety of who God is or what God is, expressing as a wave momentarily. That means that we are really nothing more or less than the goodness of God expressing as us in this moment together.
So what about God as that force of nature that surrounds the world, that is the world as us? So we had that statement, as us as well, in us, and now we're talking about as us as well. Let's go ahead and go to that next slide. In the book of Acts, there's this scripture, "For in him we live and move and have our being." We live, we move, and have our being. This is the relationship of the divine within our lives. God in whom we live, move, and have our being. And again, this is from the New Testament as well, in terms of who we are, in terms of living that. Another metaphor that we might think of is our relationship to divine in terms of, boy, you can tell I lived on the West Coast, because my next metaphor is one in which we look at Hawaii. I had a 4th grade teacher who grew up in Hawaii and insisted that we knew all of the Hawaiian islands and we knew how to pronounce each one as well.
So we're going to hear it, right?
So let's see if I can do this 50-some years later.
How many? No.
Yeah, let's not go there. Let's not go there. We're not counting exactly. Oahu, Maui, Hawaii, Kauai, Molokai, Lanai. And here's the tricky one, Niihau and Kaloawa. There you go. 7.
Your teacher would be proud.
I think she would be. I think she would be. I had a little crush on her, I got to admit. As a
really?
fourth grader, she was just such a sweet teacher. We look at these Hawaiian islands, and we look at them as individual islands out there. And yet, if you look at the whole group, if you drain the ocean a little bit, if you look below the sea level, they're all one entity. All 8 of these Hawaiian islands. And I love seeing those because they're all connected.
Yeah.
They're all part of that same thing. In reality, they're all part of Earth's surface. When we see below that sea level, they're all part of Earth. We are all part of the divine.
That single entity. So finally, we're going to look at God as the principle by which we live, God expressing through us. And we're going to reference Walt Whitman, who was an American poet in the 1800s. How many of you remember seeing Dead Poets Society? A few of you? Oh, lots. Okay. Then you know the scene at the end. They all stand up on their desk and say, "Oh, Captain, my Captain." That was Walt Whitman. That was from Walt Whitman. He also wrote about the relationship to the divine. And he was trying to express the way in which we strive to live in this God principle. And he says this: "In all humankind I see myself, not one barley corn more, not one barley corn less. The good or the bad I say of them, I say of me." So this is his way of expressing that we are all connected in an integral way, that there's no way we could be separate. And so what we're expressing as if there's something outside of ourselves, we would be expressing about ourselves. And that's why in Unity we talk about words and the power of words and understanding that they have an energy when we speak, but knowing that it has a ripple effect across everything. So if you think about it, this is an expression of non-separation. It's the goodness in the universe. It's that perfection of God that's moving in us and expressing through us with our words, our actions, and our presence. We're going to say our affirmation one more time. If you want to join me, please do. We don't have it on the screen, but I think many of you know this. There is only one presence and one power in the universe and in my life, God the good. Perfect. Thank you.
Absolutely. Good job. So today we talked about a few things. We talked about that idea of divine nature within the universe, the way that I view it, my perspective as that ocean and that wave and those surfers on that presence in whom we live and move and have our being as individuals, individualization of that divine nature, as well as the idea that we strive to be that principle as divine spirit as well. So back to my original story of surfing at Seal Beach, there's only one thing that I've learned. It's that divine spirit shows up most naturally as nature in my life. That's the starting point of my realization of who I am. I can take a walk in nature, and I know without a doubt that I am connected to God. There's just no doubt about it. I am connected through nature as well. But then again, sitting on that surfboard is that starting point where I'm staring at that horizon. I'm looking for that next set of waves. Maybe I am hiking in redwoods in Central California, hearing and seeing and smelling God right then and there. Or maybe I'm sitting on a balcony in North Carolina watching the sunset. That's God. That's divine nature. It's whatever you want to call it as well. These are the things that is active and an integral part of divine nature in my universe. Know that I love you, I bless you, I appreciate you, and I see the divine in each and every one of you. Namaste.
Namaste.
And make ourselves comfortable as we move into a time of meditation. Invite you to place your feet on the ground. Ground yourself with this nature, with this Mother Earth, because we do recognize that energy of this earth. Ground yourself with that. If it feels right, close your eyes. Place your hands in your lap. Forget about them for a while. Find your breath. And notice that rhythm, not of the ocean, but notice that rhythm of the breath. We live with many rhythms: the breath, the ocean, the tides, the seasons. We can meditate on each and every one of these. Notice your breath, which for our time here is a simple in and out. And when your mind wanders, if it wanders, you come back to the breath and you feel that in and that out one more time. We find nature naturally every single moment of the day, in us, as us, and through us. It shows up so many different ways. And we are so grateful. I invite you to think back on the last time you were in nature and was inspired. Maybe it's a walk in the park. Maybe it was a breath of fresh air. A spectacular sunset. Experience that once again. Feel that love. Feel that Zen moment one more time. And as we follow our breath, we allow those moments to come to our awareness, that as us, that through us, that in us, all over again as we move in the next few minutes in silence. as we become gently aware of the room around us once again, before we come out of that time, we've spent some time experience that as us, through us, in us, experience. We allow the realization that naturally takes us to the ideal that we are divine as well. That should not be a surprise to anyone here. You are divine. And you share this with those here at Unity of Charlotte and those in this world. And we are so grateful. We begin to come out of that. We take a deep breath, become aware of the room, and we open our eyes and wiggle around. So we say namaste. Now we move into a part of our service where that offering part, where we know that as we give, we also receive. It is through your generous gifts that Unity of Charlotte continues to be a light into this community. Ushers, please come forward. Let us join together in this prosperity blessing out loud. Joyously, I give this gift, knowing the divine presence blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God. The light of God surrounds us. We are light. The love of God enfolds us. We are love. The power of God protects us. We are power. The presence of God watches over us. We are presence. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.